I'm Jon Lentz, City & State's Managing Editor, and this is Last Look. I'm joined today by Denise Richardson, Managing Director of the General Contractors Association of New York. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
So I wanted to talk about the Scaffold Law. It's been in the news a little bit lately. As I understand it, it's a kind of law that whenever you're doing building construction and you're on a scaffold or on a ladder and a worker is hurt, the contractor or the builder is 100% liable. Could you maybe fill us in on the details of the law and its status right now?
Well, the law is actually broader than just scaffold law. That's how it's been written, but it's been interpreted in years to include any type of gravity-related accident. So not just a fall from height. But yes, one of the things that's happened in the last few years is the impact of the scaffold law has had a major impact on rising insurance costs, to the point where several insurers have left the market in New York, creating a competition issue, number one, but also creating real pressure on the premiums that are paid by the contractors. Also, because of some outsized settlements, what the contractors are finding is not only is their primary insurance being tapped up to its full limit, but their umbrella liability coverage is also now being tapped, which historically was never a factor. So as a result, what's been happening is you've seen great increases on umbrella liability coverage, as well as doubling and tripling of the primary liability coverage. So for smaller contractors, and particularly mid-sized contractors, they're finding that they can't get insurance at all, or they're finding that their insurance costs have become so extreme that it puts them at a competitive disadvantage bidding work. And if you look at some of the agency statistics as well as our own, in the last 5 years, insurance costs have gone from maybe 4 or 5% of a total project cost to now as much as 12% of a total project cost, which is putting pressure on the agencies and the owners' construction budgets as well.
Now, among groups like yours, is there a push to repeal the law? Are there efforts to reform the law? What would you like to see happen?
What we would like to see is reform of the law. I think there is a place for an option for an employee in a situation that is egregious to be able to go beyond workers' compensation. But what's happened with the scaffold law is that it has become perceived as a source of free money. And it's not. And when you look at some of the settlements, what you see is a calculation of X percent going to the trial lawyers, X percent going back to reimburse workers' compensation, because under the law in New York, that's how it works, and then the remaining portion being there to compensate the employee. So that has led to some outside settlements. And because there's a standard of absolute liability, it discounts any safety program, any safety training, any responsibility on the part of the employee for working in a safe manner. And so what we would like to see is reform of the law away from the absolute liability standard and to allow a full investigation of the circumstances that surround an accident so that everyone can be treated fairly. Right now, the employer has no place where the employer can tell its side of the story. And this is not about creating an unsafe workplace, and it's not about limiting opportunities for employees that have been hurt to be compensated. This is about injecting some fairness and some thoughtfulness into a process that is costing the taxpayers a lot of money on public projects.
Now, what do you think the chances are that something like this could happen, some reform to the law? You have Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver. People say he's an impediment. Some people point to the trial lawyers and say they're a very powerful lobby. Are those really the two entities that are holding up any change? And what do you think are the chances?
I think it's gone beyond a political issue. I think we have enough data and we have enough examples of settlements to show that has become a major cost for school districts. Uniondale School District was hit with a $21 million verdict. It's become a major cost for the MTA, a major cost for the School Construction Authority in terms of their insurance premiums. a cost for the city of New York and other school districts and other municipalities around the state. So I think the economic data is there to show that the law needs to be reformed, regardless of what the previous political issues may have been. Now, when we're looking at economic constraints, we have to look at construction costs across the board, and this is a major cost driver.
But it would have to be decided in Albany, right? I mean,
Yes.
Do you see the Assembly, the Democratic-led Assembly, taking action on this? Is there any indication that something could happen next year?
I'm not going to assess the politics of it, but I do think that it's very difficult for any elected official to go back to their constituents and say to them, yes, we pretend that we're not increasing taxes, but this really is a tax. The cost of the Scaffold Law gets paid by every single taxpayer. Let's use the New York City School Construction Authority as an example. Their insurance costs have tripled. They have an owner-controlled insurance program, which means that they purchase the insurance that all of their contractors work under. They're faced with the possibility of A, not getting bids on their new insurance premium, or B, finding that it could cost as much as $1 billion. That gets paid by every single resident of New York City because it's that much less that allows them to build schools and rehabilitate schools. So any elected official can't go back to their constituents and say, I'm not increasing your taxes when you allow something like the Scaffold Law to perpetuate. We're the only state in the country that has it, and it really is becoming a major drain on the limited public resources.
Do you hear these complaints from school districts, from the MTA, from various government agencies that do see rising costs?
Well, I think that since the industry has started to raise the issue of insurance premiums, I think all of the agencies have started to really look at the numbers, and it has become so obvious now that something needs to be done that I do think it's going to be very difficult for the Assembly to say that that something should not be done and that the situation is fine as it is. Because again, you cannot use the issue that this will create an unsafe workplace. Certainly among the GCA members, we spend a lot of money on safety and a lot of money on safety training, and we take safety very seriously. And the public agencies take safety very seriously because, in fact, most of the public agencies will not award a contract to a contractor who has an experience modification rating of greater than 1, which is an industry standard for a safe workplace. So, in fact, safety is emphasized across the board. This is not about repealing a law that will allow contractors or owners to have unsafe workplaces. That's not what this is about at all. This is about the economics of a situation that really don't match today's workplace environment.
Now I want to switch gears and also ask you about any other issues that you'll be prioritizing in 2014 in the legislative session up in Albany.
Well, clearly 2014 as well as 2015 will be very important years for the MTA and for the New York State Department of Transportation with their capital program renewals. And the source of funding, the amount of funding, will certainly be paramount issues as we look at how those two agencies will manage their capital programs over the next 4 to 5 years.
Do you expect any sort of increase in projects that your members could be getting contracts for?
Well, I think when you look at the needs of the State Department of Transportation and the needs of the MTA, there are many, many projects out there that need to be done. The question comes down to what is the available funding and which projects will ultimately be funded. I mean, part of the mix also is at the end of 2014, the federal transportation bill expires, and for state DOT, certainly, that's as much as half of their program. For the MTA, it's about 25%. So there is somewhat of a great deal of uncertainty about A, the funding sources, and B, the level of funding that will be available for those two capital plans. And obviously, since we do DOT work and MTA work, the amount of work that we will have right now is a question mark.
Denise Richardson, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
And that's it for Last Look. To check out other Last Look videos, go to our website, cityandstateny.com.